And welcome to this edition of Utah Business Matters, your weekly television window to small business here in the state of Utah. And we begin with a mentor of mine, John Gullo. He makes his home now in Utah, but he came here from Niagara Falls, New York. Why? He basically brought the franchises of Burger King here, but oh, how that changed his life into a life of giving back to the community that he loves so dearly.
Dad came into my life at 44, a really unique individual. Never graduated from grade school. He was 44 years old, had never had any kids. And when he married my mother, he decided to get a family car, and he got an Austin Healey 3000 with these little jump seats in the back that I was supposed to fit into, but that was his idea of a family car. Well, I think it was about 90 days after they're married. They were going to go out with my brother and sister, and I was going to watch the kids, and of course, at that time, it was as soon as they left, got on the phone, all the friends came over, and I was going to show off. So I took the key to my dad's car, and so I thought I had the car in reverse, and I actually had it in second. I revved it up so I could pop some wheelies out of the place, and I promptly drove it underneath the boat. 2 weeks went by. Nothing. No arguing, no yelling, no screaming, no anything. And after the 2 weeks, he sat down with me and he said, "You know, you realize what you did?" I said, "Well, yeah, I took the car, wasn't supposed to take the car, and I smashed it up." And he says, "No, you lost my trust. Let me explain something to you, son. When you're born, you got a name. It's a good name. It's what you do with that name that's important." And it clicked. And then he turned to me and he said, "Name your own punishment." And at the age of 16, I gave up my driver's license and didn't drive a car until I was 18, and I paid to have the car fixed. He used to tell me, when you're right, you're right. Stand up for when you're right. If you make a mistake, say you're sorry. But he ended up being Master Mechanic, Battalion Chief of the Ogden Fire Department, and subsequent to that, you know, we and through my foundation now underwrite Ogden City's Boots and Bunker Fire Prevention Program that goes into every grade school in the Ogden area. And very shortly, we're going to be unveiling America's Fallen Fireman Memorial here in Ogden. We've laid the cornerstone and we're putting on the statue. It's about 14 foot high. It was made by B.J. Bowden, the guy that does most of the sculpture work for the LDS Church. It's really neat, and it'll carry my father's badge, you know, on the statue. Anybody that's died in the line of duty as a fireman will be honored on that wall, and we'll go back as far as we can go back where the records are kept. And every year about this time, we will hold a celebration here in Ogden honoring those that have died in the past year. But that's my tribute to my dad. I mean, he gave me everything, and he was a true fireman. He never took a captain's exam. He never wanted to be a captain. He ended up being a battalion chief because he liked working on fire engines. The best lesson I learned in life is, you know, George Benson wrote a song, Whitney Houston made a ton of money off it. It's called The Greatest Love of All. You got to learn to love and respect yourself. I was the franchise district manager for Burger King for New York State and Western Pennsylvania. Loved my job, was doing really well in it, but I knew my next promotion was to corporate headquarters. And I guess at that time, the word entrepreneur wasn't in my vocabulary, but I don't think I could ever survive in a corporate headquarters. I couldn't spend half my time covering my rear end and half my time doing my job. I got a phone call. We have an opportunity to open up a Burger King franchise in Logan, Utah. I had never been west of Chicago. I mean, here I was having to make a life decision that quickly, and so I made the decision to move to Utah. And it was the best decision I ever made in my life. We opened up Logan, Utah, and we starved. And I learned what being the only restaurant up in the middle of nowhere was in the state of Utah. People used to think we were a Whataburger. I mean, they didn't really know. It was really interesting. Ironically, a year later, we opened up our second restaurant here in Ogden, Utah, on Riverdale Road, and that turned out to be the highest volume opening in the Intermountain States at that time. My business philosophy was based on breaking even. It wasn't a question of taking a lot of money and making a lot of money and going out and living the high road. So I became a downside economist. I always did everything I did based on what's the worst case scenario. A few years ago, I gave a talk at the Goddard Business School at Weber State. I turned to the students and I said, you know, When I left Burger King, I was the best operation guy there was. There was nobody better than me. And you're probably sitting in this room saying, you know, I'm a 4.0 student. I'm top of my class. Ain't nobody sharper than me. I said, get this in your gut. Until you've had to meet a payroll or feed a loser, you don't know nothing.
We're back with a continuing story on John Gullo right after this. And welcome back as we continue on Utah Business Matters with the story of John Gullo. He moved to Utah from Niagara Falls, New York. His business, Burger King. His business now, giving back. And he does it in the town that he loves so much, Ogden, Utah.
Being a type A New Yorker, everything in life, quality of life, I learned out here. I experienced it. First time I went ATV and it was with my sons. First time I went horseback riding, it was with my sons. First time I went hunting, it was with my sons. So all the quality things in life were part of the movement out here. My father taught me never to have debt. And so that was always key. I never had personal debt, never financed a car. And from my business standpoint, the key was to get out of debt as quickly as possible and retire the debt. So at the end, I was sitting there with 30-some restaurants without any debt. When it was time for me to leave and I quit, I didn't form the Gullo Family Foundation. I formed the American Dream Foundation because I lived the American Dream. Barely got out of high school, C- diploma, didn't go to college. There was no reason for me on paper to be where I was at today. What it was, though, is I enjoyed my life. And that's what I tell kids when I talk to them. The most important thing in your career development is to find something you like doing. I brought in partners because I didn't want debt. I would rather own 25% of a debt-free business than 100% of a debt business. So I actually had 17 different operating partnerships for the 44 restaurants we had in 3 states, which was fun. The key in business is having control. It isn't owning 100%, it's controlling what's happening within the business. And I never gave up control, but I did bring in investors and they were all ended up being pretty happy. Being in a single parent family, you know, coming out of when I grew up, I joke with the kids I deal with now when I said when I was in school I was so poor I couldn't pay attention. It was never a financial thing. I didn't realize how much money that we had made or what we had done really until at the end. And I believe that when times are hard, you have to maximize your gains. So when times were tough, especially around the year 2000, the millennium crisis that everybody experienced, I went out and remodeled restaurants. I put capital back in. I gave my customers a reason to come to us. I made my restaurants different. And I love kids, and I spend a lot of time with kids. We work with with a very strong inner city program here in Ogden called Youth Impact. I think if I was greedier, I might end up being richer. But I was never motivated by greed. I was never motivated that way. I realized that if I wasn't building restaurants, I was a bad businessman. Because if you're not growing, your mind isn't thinking the same way. I'm proud of the fact that I was the first restaurant guy to put a fast food restaurant into a gas station down in Hurricane, Utah. I got Burger King to write me a one-year franchise because it was an experiment. We created kind of a small kiosk kind of thing, and the results were so astronomical and successful, people thought it was a fluke. And as I moved on, and you know, I developed over 10 of those restaurants myself, and Burger King would send people to talk to me because they didn't know anything about it. They didn't know how to do it. I mean, I had done it, they had left me alone, and I was successful with it. But before any other chain, anybody else, the first fast food restaurant was a Burger King and a Chevron station in Hurricane, Utah. And that's when I decided to sell out. I sold Wisconsin first, Arizona went second, Southern Utah went third, and then the Northern Utah was the last group of stores that I sold. It's about giving back. And I said, I'm a member of the LDS Church. My favorite song is Because I've Been Given Much, I Too Much Give. And that's what we do. Now, we're not big heavyweights in the charitable end of it, but we're active and we support and we're part of everything that we're involved with. We produce videos for nonprofits to tell their story. Ogden, Utah never had a 4th of July celebration, and we created the first one. It's grown into probably the second biggest event in Weber County. We have between 15 and 20,000 people every year. It's built around a demolition derby, believe it or not. We have the largest demolition derby in the western United States, and it's put on by nonprofits. It's a charity event. Last year we had 800 volunteers who gave up their holiday to be on the 4th of July, and what we do is we reimburse every volunteer hour $10 an hour for the charities that are part of it. You know, it came from my family. I mean, especially my mom. In other words, I remember even as a kid saving $5 or $10 and going out and buying nominal gifts for Christmas time. But it's always been a part of my life. My very strong family ties. We're third generation Sicilians, and if you ain't hugging and kissing, if you're a Sicilian, you ain't meeting anybody, and it doesn't make any difference. I was asked by another businessman here in town what I want my legacy to be. And I said, you know, if I help one kid, and he remembers, and it has an impact on his life, this community, this world, that's all you need to get out of life. And that's why it's the American Dream Foundation, not the Gullo Family Foundation. We've named 3 things so far. One was a building we donated to Naval Industries I named after my mother, and they ended up getting the contract to shred all the IRS paperwork, and they employ 20 to 30 physically mentally challenged people there. Then we named the James F. Robinette Fire Prevention Fund, which does this project with this Ogden City's Boots and Bunker program. Will be part of this memorial. Then at the ATC College, they just built a new wing, and my sister was part of my business with me, and we named one of the study halls and branded that. But the Gullo name doesn't show up anyplace. It's in my heart. It's in my family's heart. It's what we believe in, and that's all I care about. Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, I used to joke with my friends that my son was the cheapest guy I knew until he was spending my money. Now that when I actually sold him 4 restaurants. I didn't give them to him. He had to pay me for them. So now, even though he was in the business all that time, learning about money is an entirely different thing from operations. And he's paid me back. He's got his 4 restaurants, and he's completely out of debt. I had the pleasure of reading John Husband Sr.'s book. Absolutely, positively. It was almost like the two of us were related in our philosophies in regards to business. Honesty and integrity is critical, and unfortunately, as time has gone on, you don't find handshake deals too much anymore. And I really believe that those are the relationships you have to look for. The most fun I've been doing is we brought a new sport called pickleball to northern Utah. It had a lot to do with me coming back from having 5 bypasses, but it's the real term would probably be short court tennis. But last year, me and my wife donated 4 courts to Ogden City out at Mount Ogden Park. I've become an ambassador for the program, and we put it in Roy Junior High School last year as a PE project. And this year it's going into Highland Junior High School as a PE project. And I joke with the principal, I said, you're going to be the principal that brought pickleball to 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A competition. This is a great blue-collar town. It's big enough to have all the amenities that you need, and small enough to know somebody that knows somebody. I don't know of any time that you don't run across a situation. What I thought was kind of humorous is when we bought our house 5 years ago, my next-door neighbor came over to me and said, hi, how you doing, what have you? And he says, I introduced myself. He says, Gullo. He says, I went to school in Buffalo with a Gullo. Maybe I went to school with your brother. And I says, no. I says, you're 10 years younger than my brother. I says, you probably went to school with my nephews. But here I moved next door to a guy who grew up in Buffalo. And he's a doctor here. He works, runs the McCady intensive care unit. It has a bad reputation, but it's perception, it's not reality. And we've proven it on the 4th of July, we've 11 years, never had a fight, never had a problem. As a concessionaire, we've broken Weber County's draft beer consumption record 3 times in that 11-year period. Never, it's a family event, never had a problem. So that tells you really what this town is all about. It's just a very personal, low-key, inexpensive town. It's blue collar. A lot like Niagara Falls was when I left. Honesty, integrity. Live up to what your standards are. Set your standards high, and don't ever break those standards, and stick to them. And if along the way you make a bad decision, go to that person, say you're sorry, did it, and make it right.